In the distant future, humanity had grown beyond the confines of Earth. They had built ships that could travel between stars, established colonies on distant planets, and formed alliances with alien civilizations. It was a time of exploration, discovery, and hope. But it was also a time of tension, as different species vied for power and influence in the galaxy. At the center of this delicate balance was the Galactic Council, a governing body made up of representatives from various intelligent species. The Council's role was to maintain peace and ensure fair treatment among all members of the galactic community. For years, humanity had been a respected member of the Council. Earth's leaders worked hard to show that humans were capable of contributing positively to the galaxy. They shared technology, offered aid during crises, and participated in joint missions to explore uncharted regions of space. However, not everyone on the Council trusted humans. Some saw them as unpredictable and too ambitious, while others believed they posed a threat to the established order. These voices grew louder over time, fueled by jealousy and fear. One day, an announcement came that would change everything. The Council called an emergency session demanding representatives from every member species attend. Alex Carter, a skilled pilot who served in Earth's defense fleet, watched the news unfold from his quarters aboard a space station orbiting Mars. He wasn't directly involved in politics, but he knew something big was happening. Rachel Monroe, one of Earth's top diplomats, was already en route to the Council headquarters. She felt a knot forming in her stomach as she prepared to face whatever challenge lay ahead. When Rachel arrived at the Council chamber, she found herself surrounded by towering aliens with shimmering skin, elongated limbs, and glowing eyes. Each species had its own unique appearance, but they all shared one thing in common: authority. Rachel took her seat at the table, reserved for human delegates, trying to project confidence despite the weight of the moment. The room fell silent as the Council chair, being known as Zorith, whose crystalline body refracted light into dazzling patterns, rose to speak. "Delegates," Zorith began, their voice resonating like a deep hum. "We have gathered here today to address a matter of grave concern. Recent developments have led us to question the intentions of certain members within our alliance. Specifically, we must confront the growing militarization of Earth." Rachel's heart sank. She had expected criticism, but not this. Over the past decade, Earth had expanded its fleet of starships, investing heavily in both defense and exploration. While some argued it was necessary for protection, others viewed it as a sign of aggression. Rachel opened her mouth to respond, but Zorith continued before she could say a word. "The Council has reached a unanimous decision," Zorith declared. "Earth must dismantle its military fleet entirely. All weapons systems, combat vessels, and offensive capabilities are to be decommissioned within 6 months. Failure to comply will result in immediate expulsion from the Galactic Council and revocation of all privileges granted to your species." The room erupted in murmurs. Some delegates nodded approvingly, while others exchanged uneasy glances. Rachel clenched her fists under the table, struggling to keep her composure. Expulsion from the Council meant isolation, of fate no species wanted. Without access to trade routes, shared resources, or diplomatic channels, Earth would struggle to survive in the harshness of space. But dismantling the fleet? Humanity had fought too hard to secure its place in the galaxy to give up now. Back on the Mars orbital station, Alex heard about the ultimatum through a live broadcast. He shook his head in disbelief. "They can't be serious," he muttered to himself. Around him, other pilots and crew members reacted with anger and frustration. Some slammed their fists against walls, while others shouted curses at the screen showing the Council meeting. Alex understood their outrage, but he also knew panic wouldn't solve anything. As much as he disliked politicians, he hoped Rachel could find a way to negotiate a compromise. Rachel, however, faced an uphill battle. When it was finally her turn to speak, she stood tall and addressed the Council. Her voice was calm but firm. "Honorable delegates, I understand your concerns about Earth's military presence. However, let me remind you that our fleet exists not just for defense, but also for exploration and humanitarian missions. We've saved countless lives across the galaxy, responding to disasters, and aiding those in need. To dismantle our fleet would leave us and many others vulnerable to threats we cannot yet predict. Her words seemed to resonate with a few members, but most remained unmoved. One alien representative, a hulking creature with scales that shifted, colors depending on its mood, leaned forward and growled, "Your actions speak louder than your promises, human. You expand your territory, build more ships, and increase your firepower. How can we trust you when you refuse to limit your ambitions?" Rachel hesitated, searching for the right response. She wanted to argue that ambition wasn't inherently a mint, bad, that progress required taking risks, but she knew it wouldn't sway the majority. Instead, she appealed to reason. If you truly believe dismantling our fleet is the solution, then consider this. What happens if another species follows suit? Or worse, what if none do? Will you demand the same of everyone? Or are we simply being singled out because we're new to this galaxy? Her question hung in the air, unanswered. The council adjourned shortly afterward, leaving Rachel feeling defeated. She returned to her quarters, replaying the events in her mind. No matter how diplomatically she framed her arguments, the council seemed determined to push forward with their plan. It wasn't just about Earth's fleet. It was about control, by forcing humanity to disarm.
Ow!
The council aimed to assert dominance and remind everyone who held the real power. Meanwhile, back on Earth, news of the ultimatum spread like wildfire. Protests erupted in cities around the globe. Citizens marched in the streets, holding signs that read "No to disarmament" and "Protect our future." Social media buzzed with outrage as people demanded answers from their leaders. Some called for defiance, urging the government to stand firm against the council's demands. Others worried about the consequences of refusing. Fearing retaliation from more advanced species, Alex watched footage of the protests on his tablet, feeling a mix of pride and apprehension. He admired the passion of his fellow humans, but he couldn't ignore the reality of their situation. Earth's fleet was impressive compared to what it used to be, but it still paled in comparison to the combined might of the Council's forces. If war broke out, humanity would be outnumbered and outgunned. Yet, surrendering wasn't an option either. It's not after everything they'd achieved. As days passed, tensions escalated. The Council issued reminders of the deadline, warning Earth that failure to comply would result in severe consequences. In response, Earth's leaders convened an emergency summit to discuss their options. Military officials argued for strengthening defenses, while diplomats pushed for further negotiations. Rachel attended the meeting, sharing insights she'd gained from her interactions with the Council. Despite the gravity of the situation, there was a sense of unity in the room. For the first time in years, humanity was coming together not as nations or factions, but as one species fighting for survival. Alex received orders to report to Earth for a briefing. As he boarded a shuttle bound for the planet's surface, he stared out the window at the swirling blue and green orb below. He thought about the billions of lives depending on decisions made by people like Rachel and the leaders gathered at the summit. He didn't envy them. Their choices carried unimaginable weight. Still, he resolved to do whatever it took to protect his home, whether that meant flying a starfighter or standing shoulder to shoulder with civilians on the front lines. By the time Alex landed, the world felt different. There was a palpable sense of urgency in the air, as though everyone understood the stakes. News outlets reported round-the-clock updates, analyzing every move made by the Council and Earth's government. Scientists proposed creative solutions, suggesting ways to repurpose civilian ships for defense. Engineers worked tirelessly to upgrade existing vessels, adding armor plating and experimental weapon systems. Even children contributed, organizing fundraisers to support the cause. Through it all, Rachel remained a steady presence. She traveled between meetings, giving speeches and rallying support. Though exhausted, she refused to give up. In humanity's ability to persevere, even in the face of overwhelming odds, and deep down, she hoped that maybe, just maybe, the Council would see reason before it was too late. But if they didn't, Rachel knew one thing for certain: humanity wouldn't go quietly into the night. Rachel Monroe stepped into the grand chamber of the Galactic Council once again, her heart pounding, but her expression calm. The room was alive with murmurs from alien delegates, their voices echoing off the high ceilings. Some leaned toward each other in quiet conversation, while others stared at Rachel with cold, calculating eyes. She could feel their judgment, their skepticism, and their impatience. It was clear that the council had already made up its mind about Earth. Still, Rachel refused to give up. Humanity's future depended on her ability to negotiate, to reason. To find some sliver of hope in this bleak situation, Zoroth, the crystalline leader of the council, signaled for silence. As the room quieted, Zoroth turned its shimmering gaze toward Rachel. "Delegate Monroe," it said, its voice low and resonant, "you have been given ample opportunity to address our concerns. Yet your words have done little to reassure us. What more do you wish to say?" Rachel took a deep breath, steadying herself. She knew this moment would define not just her career, but the fate of billions. "Honorable members of the council," she began, her tone measured and respectful. "I understand your fears. I truly do. But let me ask you this. Has Earth ever acted aggressively toward another species? Have we sought to conquer or exploit? No. Our fleet exists not to threaten but to protect, to explore, to help." Her words were met with stony silence. A few delegates exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. One of them, a tall insect-like creature with iridescent wings, clicked its mandibles in irritation. "Your intentions are irrelevant," it hissed. "The fact remains that your military strength is disproportionate to your role in the galaxy. You are newcomers, humans. You must earn trust before demanding respect." Rachel clenched her jaw, but forced herself to remain composed. "And how exactly are we supposed to earn that trust if you strip away our means of self-defense? If you leave us vulnerable to threats, both known and unknown, expelling us from the council won't make those threats disappear. It will only isolate us and, perhaps endanger others as well." The room erupted into murmurs again, some voices rising in agreement, others in sharp disagreement. Zoroth raised a hand, silencing the crowd. "Enough," it said firmly. "Has had its chance to explain itself. The decision stands. You have 6 months to comply, or face the consequences." Rachel felt a wave of frustration wash over her, but she nodded curtly. There was no point arguing further. The council had spoken, and they weren't going to listen. As she left the chamber, her mind raced with possibilities. How could she convince them to change their minds? Is there anyone among the council who might still see reason? Or was humanity truly alone in this fight? Back on the Mars orbital station, Alex Carter paced the length of the command deck, his boots clicking softly against the metal floor. He'd just finished watching a live feed of Rachel's meeting with the council, and the anger bubbling inside him was hard to contain. "They can't be serious," he muttered under his breath. 6 months? That's barely enough time to prepare, let alone dismantle an entire fleet. Around him, the station buzzed with activity. Pilots ran diagnostics on their ships, engineers tinkered with engines, and technicians monitored communications channels for any sign of trouble. Everyone knew what was at stake. The ultimatum had sent shockwaves through the ranks, and morale was low. Alex could see it in the tired eyes of his fellow crew members, hear it in the tense conversations that filled the corridors. "Hey, Alex," called Mia Torres, one of the younger pilots, as she approached him. Her dark hair was tied back in, a loose ponytail, and her uniform bore the faint scuff marks of long hours spent in the cockpit. "What do you think we should do? Just give up?" Alex stopped pacing and looked at her. Mia was smart, determined, and fiercely loyal to Eartha, quality he admired. But right now, she looked lost, unsure of what to believe. He sighed, running a hand through his short-cropped hair. "No," he said firmly. "We don't give up. Not now, not ever. If the council thinks we're going to roll over, they've got another thing coming?" Mia nodded, though doubt lingered in her eyes. "But what can we do? We're outnumbered, outgunned. They've got decades, centuries of experience on us." "We adapt," Alex replied, his voice steady. "Yes. What humans do best. We find ways to survive, even when the odds are stacked against us. And we don't do it alone. We stick together. We fight for each other." His words seemed to bolster Mia's spirits, and she gave him a small smile before heading back to her station. Alex watched her go, feeling a pang of responsibility. These pilots trusted him, looked to him for guidance. He couldn't let them down, not when the stakes were this high. Meanwhile, on Earth, protests continued to grow. Cities were flooded with people holding banners and chanting slogans. In New York, thousands gathered outside the United Nations headquarters, their voices carrying over the skyscrapers. In Tokyo, crowds marched through neon-lit streets, waving flags and lighting candles in solidarity. Even in smaller towns and rural areas, citizens found ways to make their voices heard. Social media platforms lit up with hashtags like #StandWithEarth and #NoToDisarmament, spreading awareness across the globe. Governments responded by calling emergency sessions, debating strategies and contingency plans. Military leaders argued for increasing production of starships and weapons, while diplomats pushed for renewed negotiations with the Council. Scientists proposed innovative solutions, such as converting civilian vessels into makeshift warships, or developing cloaking technology to evade detection. Every idea, no matter how far-fetched, was considered amid the chaos. Rachel returned to Earth to attend a summit organized by world leaders. The meeting took place in a secure underground facility where representatives from every nation came together to discuss their options. Rachel stood at the front of the room, addressing the assembly with clarity and conviction. "The Council has underestimated us," she said, her voice ringing out over the hushed crowd. "They think we'll fold under pressure, that we'll choose submission over resistance. But they don't know who we are. They don't understand what it means to be human. We've faced challenges before, famines, pandemics, and we've always found a way to overcome them. This time will be no different." Her speech earned applause, but it also sparked heated debates. Some leaders advocated for immediate defiance, urging Earth to fortify its defenses and prepare for conflict. Others cautioned against rash decisions, warning that open rebellion could lead to catastrophic consequences. The discussion stretched late into the night, with no clear consensus emerging. Despite the disagreements, one thing became abundantly clear. Humanity was united in its determination to resist the Council's demands. For the first time in years, nations set aside their differences and worked toward a common goal. Resources were pooled, intelligence shared, and plans coordinated. Even private companies joined the effort, offering funding, technology, and expertise. As the days passed, Alex noticed a shift in the atmosphere aboard the orbital station. The initial despair had given way to a sense of purpose. Pilots trained harder than ever, pushing themselves to master new maneuvers and tactics. Engineers worked around the clock, upgrading ships and testing experimental systems. Morale improved, fueled by a shared belief that they could and would prevail. One evening, Alex sat in the station's mess hall picking at a tray of rehydrated food. Across from him, Mia joined him, sliding into the seat with a grin. "Putting everyone through the ringer," she teased, nodding toward the flight simulator bay. "Even the veterans are complaining." Alex chuckled, though his expression remained serious. "If we're going to stand a chance, we need to be ready for anything. The Council isn't going to play fair, so neither should we." Mia's grin faded, replaced by a look of determination. "You really think we can win this?" she asked quietly. Alex hesitated, weighing his response. The truth was, he didn't know. The odds were against them, and the road ahead would be fraught with danger. But giving up wasn't an option, not for him, not for anyone. "I think we have to try," he said finally. "Because if we don't, then everything we've built, the colonies, the alliances, the dreams of a better future, it all disappears. And I'm not willing to let that happen." Mia nodded, resolve hardening in her eyes. "Neither am I." As they sat there in silence, the weight of their mission settled over them. The Council had crossed a line, demanding something no free society could accept. Now humanity was waking up, shedding its polite mode and preparing to fight back. Whatever came next, Alex knew one thing for certain. Earth wouldn't go down without a fight. Rachel Monroe sat in a dimly lit cafe on the outskirts of Geneva, Switzerland, nursing a cup of coffee that had long gone cold. The air was thick with tension, not just from the weight of her thoughts, but also from the constant hum of encrypted communications devices scattered across the table. Across from her sat David Hale, a quiet man with sharp features and an even sharper mind. David wasn't human, belonged to a species known as the Veil, who were tall, slender beings with skin that shimmered faintly under light. Despite his alien appearance, David had always been a trusted ally within the Galactic Council's administration. He had tipped Rachel off about secret meetings between certain council members and rival factions, meetings that hinted at a deeper conspiracy targeting Earth. "You're sure about this?" Rachel asked, her voice low and steady. She leaned closer, ensuring no one else could overhear their conversation. David nodded, his silvery eyes locking onto hers. "I've seen the data myself," he replied. His voice was soft, but carried an undeniable urgency. Certain council members have been working behind the scenes to destabilize Earth's position. They've been feeding misinformation to other species, painting humanity as aggressive and unpredictable. "It's not just about your fleet, it's about isolating you entirely." Rachel felt a chill run down her spine. She had suspected foul play, but hearing it confirmed made her blood boil. "Why?" Drew demanded. "What do they gain by doing this?" David hesitated, glancing around the room before answering. "Tower," he said simply. "Some factions see Earth as a threat to their dominance. Your rapid technological advancements, your adaptability, they make you dangerous in their eyes. By disarming you, they weaken any chance of competition. If they can rally others against you, they secure their own influence over the galaxy." Rachel clenched her fists under the table, her nails digging into her palms. This wasn't just politics, it was manipulation. Cold, calculated, and ruthless. The Council wasn't acting out of concern for peace or stability. They were playing a game, and humanity was the pawn. "What do I do?" she asked, desperation creeping into her tone. "How do I expose them without getting us all killed?" David leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. Carefully, he warned. "If you move too quickly, they'll silence you or worse. But if you gather enough evidence, you might be able to turn some of the more neutral species against them. There are cracks in their alliance, Rachel. Exploit them." Meanwhile, Alex Carter stood aboard the Mars orbital station, staring at a holographic map of nearby star systems projected onto the wall. The image flickered slightly as engineers adjusted the station's sensors, scanning for signs of unusual activity. Over the past few days, reports had trickled in about increased alien patrols near human colonies. At first, these ships claimed to be conducting routine inspections, but Alex wasn't convinced. Something didn't sit right with him. "Anything new?" asked Mia Torres, stepping up beside him. Her face was pale, dark circles forming under her eyes from lack of sleep. Like everyone else, she'd been working tirelessly to prepare for whatever came next. Alex shook his head. "Not yet," he replied, "but I don't like it. These patrols aren't random. They're watching us, testing our defenses." Mia frowned, crossing her arms. "Do you think they're planning something? An attack?" "I don't know," Alex admitted. "But we can't afford to wait and find out. We need to stay one step ahead." As if on cue, the station's alarms blared to life, startling both of them. Red lights flashed overhead as a voice crackled over the intercom. "Unidentified vessels detected entering Sector 7. All personnel report to stations immediately." Alex cursed under his breath and sprinted toward the command deck. Mia closed behind him. When they arrived, the room was already buzzing with activity. Technicians typed furiously at their consoles, while officers barked orders into communicators. On the main screen, several alien ships loomed large, their sleek designs unmistakable. They weren't part of the Council's official fleet. They were mercenaries, hired guns notorious for their ruthlessness. "What are they doing here?" Mia whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I don't know," Alex muttered, narrowing his eyes. "But they're not here to talk." The lead ship transmitted a message, its tone arrogant and dismissive. "This is Commander Kale of the Valrak Syndicate. Surrender your station and prepare for inspection. Resist, and we will open fire." Word sent a ripple of fear through the crew. No one needed to be told what would happen if the mercenaries attacked. The station's defenses were strong, but they weren't designed to withstand a full-scale assault. Alex glanced at the captain. Waiting for orders? Weapons online? The captain barked, his voice firm despite the tension in the air. Prepare countermeasures. If they want to fight, they'll get one. Alex nodded, taking his place at the tactical console. His hands moved swiftly, inputting commands to ready the station's missile batteries and energy shields. Beside him, Mia worked just as quickly, coordinating with pilots stationed in nearby hangars. Every second counted. The mercenaries didn't waste time. Without warning, their ships unleashed a barrage of plasma torpedoes, lighting up the void of space with bursts of fiery orange. The station shuddered under the impact, alarms wailing as damage reports flooded in. Alex gritted his teeth, focusing. On the task at hand, he couldn't afford to panic. Not now. Return fire, the captain shouted. Target their engines. Alex complied, launching a volley of missiles that streaked across the darkness. One struck true, crippling a mercenary vessel and sending it spiraling out of control. Cheers erupted from the crew, but the victory was short-lived. More ships emerged from hyperspace, reinforcements arriving faster than anyone had anticipated. We're outnumbered, Mia said, her voice tight with worry. We can't hold them off forever. Alex knew she was right, but retreat wasn't an option. If the mercenaries breached the station, countless lives would be lost. He tapped his communicator, patching through to the nearest colony. Is Captain Carter of the Mars Orbital Station. We're under attack and require immediate assistance. Pete, we're under attack. The response came moments later, filled with static but clear enough to understand help is on the way. Hold your position. Hold their position. Easier said than done. The mercenaries pressed their advantage, unleashing another wave of attacks. Explosions rocked the station, knocking some crew members off their feet. Through it all, Alex remained focused, his mind racing with strategies to keep them alive. Back on Earth, Rachel received word of the attack during a late-night meeting with military leaders. Her heart sank as she listened to the details. Her worst fears confirmed. The Council hadn't just issued an ultimatum, they were actively working to weaken Earth's defenses. Hiring mercenaries to harass colonies and patrol routes was only the beginning. If humanity didn't act soon, they'd lose everything. We need allies, Rachel declared, slamming her fist on the table. Neutral species, sympathetic factions, is anyone willing to stand with us? We can't fight this alone. One of the generals nodded grimly. Agreed. But how do we convince them to take a stand? Most are too afraid of retaliation from the Council. Rachel thought for a moment, then smiled faintly. We show them the truth. David gave me access to classified files proving the Council's manipulations. If we share this information, we can turn their fear into outrage. The plan was risky, but it was the best shot they had. Over the next few days, Rachel worked tirelessly to distribute the evidence, encrypting messages and broadcasting them. Two key figures across the galaxy. Slowly but surely, whispers of dissent began to spread. Some species openly condemned the Council's actions, while others offered covert support. Even within the Council itself, cracks began to form as delegates questioned the legitimacy of the ultimatum. Despite the growing resistance, Rachel knew the hardest battles were still ahead. The Council wouldn't back down easily, and neither would its allies. Humanity's survival depended on unity, not just among humans, but among all those who valued freedom and self-determination. As she stared out at the night sky, Rachel felt a spark of hope ignite within her. The Council had crossed a line, and now humanity was ready to push back. The attack on the Mars orbital station had left scars both physical and emotional. Repairs were underway, with engineers working tirelessly to patch up damaged sections of the structure. Smoke still lingered in some corridors, and the hum of emergency generators filled the air. But despite the chaos, a sense of resolve permeated the station. The crew had survived, and they weren't about to let fear dictate their actions. Alex Carter stood on the observation deck, staring out at the vast expanse of space beyond the reinforced glass. His mind replayed the battle over and over again, the explosions, the shouts, the narrow escapes. It was a reminder of how fragile their position truly was. Mia Torres joined him after a while, her face pale but determined. She carried a tablet under one arm, its screen glowing faintly with updates from engineering teams. "They say it'll take weeks to fully repair everything," she said, leaning against the railing beside him. "But we're functional for now." "Barely." Alex nodded, his gaze fixed on the distant stars. "Got lucky this time," he admitted. "If reinforcements hadn't shown up when they did," he trailed off, not needing to finish the thought. They both knew what could have happened. Mia sighed, gripping the railing tightly. "Do you think there'll be more attacks? Or was this just a warning?" Alex turned to look at her, his expression grim. "I don't know, but I'm betting on more. Whoever sent those mercenaries wants us scared and weak. They're testing our limits, seeing how far we'll bend before we break. And what happens if we don't?" Mia asked quietly, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "We fight back," Alex replied, without hesitation. "We adapt. We find ways to protect ourselves and each other." He paused, glancing at her. "That's what humans do best, isn't it? Survive." On Earth, Rachel Monroe worked around the clock to rally support for humanity's cause. After exposing the Council's manipulative tactics, she traveled to remote colonies and neutral territories, meeting with leaders of alien species who shared her concerns. Some were hesitant to openly oppose the Council, fearing retaliation, but others were eager to join the resistance. One such ally was Marcus Lee, a former engineer for the Council who had grown disillusioned with their methods. Marcus lived on a small, isolated colony inhabited by humans and sympathetic aliens. Far from prying eyes, when Rachel arrived, Marcus greeted her warmly, though his expression remained guarded. He led her to a makeshift workshop tucked away in the colony's industrial sector. Inside, rows of dismantled equipment lined the walls, and wires snaked across workbenches, cluttered with tools. Marcus gestured for Rachel to sit as he pulled up a holographic display showing schematics of the Council's communication network. "This is why I contacted you," Marcus explained, pointing to a series of nodes highlighted in red. "These are key relay points in the Council's system. If we can disable them, even hijack them, we can broadcast your evidence directly to every species in the galaxy. No filters, no censorship." Rachel leaned forward, studying the diagram carefully. "How risky would that be?" she asked. "Wouldn't the Council trace the signal back here?" Marcus nodded. "It's dangerous, no question. But it's also our best shot at reaching people before the Council spins the narrative further. Once they see the truth, they won't be able to ignore it." Rachel hesitated, weighing the risks. She trusted Marcus, but the stakes were unimaginably high. If they failed, the colony could be destroyed, and everyone living there, along with it. Still, she couldn't afford to hesitate. Humanity's survival depended on bold moves like this. "Let's do it," she said finally, her voice firm. "But we need to act fast. Every day we wait gives the Council more time to tighten their grip." Marcus smiled faintly, though there was no joy in it. "Understood. Give me 24 hours to finalize the plan, and we'll make it happen." As preparations began, Alex received orders to lead a reconnaissance mission to investigate reports of increased alien activity near Earth's outer colonies. The mission was risky. The region was heavily patrolled by Counciling ships, and any sign of aggression could escalate into open conflict. But Alex knew it was necessary. Understanding the enemy's movements would give humanity a crucial advantage. He assembled a small team, including Mia and several experienced pilots. Before departing, Alex gathered them in the briefing room, laying out the details. "Our goal is simple. Observe and report," he said, pacing in front of the group. Stay low, stay quiet, and avoid engagement unless absolutely necessary. If things go south, stick together and head for the extraction point. Got it?" Pilots nodded, their expressions tense but resolute. None of them liked the idea of sneaking around, but they understood the importance of the mission. As they boarded their fighters and launched into space, Alex felt a familiar mix of adrenaline and dread coursing through him. The void ahead was vast and unforgiving, and danger lurked in every shadow. For hours, The team drifted silently through asteroid fields and debris clouds, using natural cover to mask their presence. Sensors picked up faint traces of alien signals. Confirming the reports, through binocular scanners, Alex spotted clusters of ships stationed near mining operations and supply routes. It wasn't hard to guess their purpose. They were cutting off resources, slowly starving Earth's colonies into submission. "This is bad," Mia whispered over the coms, her voice barely audible. "If they keep this up, the colonies won't last much longer." "I know," Alex replied grimly, "but we're not letting that happen. Relay these coordinates back to base. Command needs to know where they're hitting hardest." Before they could retreat, however, alarms blared inside their cockpits. A squadron of alien fighters had detected their presence and was closing in fast. Alex cursed under his breath, switching his ship's systems to combat mode. "Team, looks like we're doing this the hard way. Stay sharp." The ensuing dogfight was chaotic and intense. Plasma bolts streaked past their shields, narrowly missing critical components. Alex maneuvered his fighter with practiced precision, dodging fire while lining up shots on enemy vessels. Beside him, Mia proved her skill, taking down 2 fighters. With quick, precise blasts, despite being outnumbered, the team fought fiercely, their determination outweighing their disadvantage. Just as the situation seemed hopeless, reinforcements arrived, a squadron of human fighters dispatched from a nearby colony. Together, they drove off the remaining aliens, allowing Alex's team to escape unscathed. As they regrouped at the extraction point, relief washed over them, though it was short-lived. The skirmish had been a close call, a stark reminder of how precarious their position truly was. Back on Earth, Rachel and Marcus prepared for their broadcast. The colony's power grid hummed with anticipation as technicians finalized connections between Marcus's equipment and the Council's communication network. Rachel paced nervously, rehearsing her message in her head. This was at the moment everything hinged upon. If successful, the truth would reach millions, perhaps billions, of beings across the galaxy. If not, "You ready?" Marcus asked, interrupting her thoughts. His tone was calm, but carried an edge of urgency. "As ready as I'll ever be," Rachel replied, forcing a smile. She stepped up to the console, adjusting the settings to ensure maximum range. When the green light flashed, signaling the connection was live, she took a deep breath and began speaking. "To all who hear this message, listen carefully. What you have been told about humanity is a lie. The Galactic Council has manipulated events to paint us as aggressors, using fear and misinformation to justify their demands for disarmament. Their true goal is control over Earth and control over the galaxy. We ask only for fairness, for the right to defend ourselves and determine our own future.
Ow.
Do not believe the propaganda. Stand with us, and together we will forge a better path forward." Her words echoed across countless star systems, breaking through barriers of language and culture. Within minutes, responses poured in, messages of support, offers of aid, and declarations of solidarity. Even some counseling species expressed doubt, questioning the morality of the ultimatum. The tide was beginning to turn, but the victory was bittersweet. Moments after the transmission ended, alarms sounded throughout the colony. Scanners detected incoming ship's council enforcers, likely sent to silence the source of the broadcast. Marcus looked at Rachel, his expression grim, but resolute. "We knew this might happen," he said simply. "Go, get to safety. I'll hold them off." Rachel shook her head, tears welling in her eyes. "No, I'm not leaving you." "You have to," Marcus insisted, placing a hand on her shoulder. "You're the voice of this movement. Without you, none." Before she could argue further, explosions rocked the colony, shaking the ground beneath their feet. Marcus pushed her toward the nearest escape pod, sealing the hatch behind her. As the pod launched into space, Rachel watched helplessly as the colony disappeared in a blaze of fire and smoke. In the days that followed, humanity mourned the loss of Marcus and the brave colonists who had sacrificed everything to spread the truth, but their deaths were not in vain. Across the galaxy, dissent grew louder, stronger, and more unified. Species once too afraid to speak out now joined forces with Earth. forming a coalition dedicated to resisting the Council's tyranny. For the first time in years, hope burned brightly, not just for humanity, but for all those who believed in freedom. The aftermath of Marcus Lee's sacrifice weighed heavily on Rachel Monroe. She sat alone in her quarters aboard a human transport ship, staring at the blank wall as if searching for answers that wouldn't come. Her mind replayed the final moments of the colony's destruction, over and over again: the alarms, the explosions, Marcus's calm but resolute face as he pushed her into the escape pod. I'd given his life to ensure the truth reached others, and now it was up to her to honor that sacrifice. But how? The Council's forces were relentless, their grip tightening with every passing day. Humanity's allies were growing in number, yes, but they were still outnumbered and outgunned. Rachel clenched her fists, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. She wanted to scream, to lash out at the injustice of it all. Instead, she forced herself to focus. Anger wouldn't win this fight, strategy would. She opened her tablet and began reviewing the latest reports from Earth's intelligence network. News of her broadcast had spread like wildfire, igniting dissent not only among neutral species but even within the ranks of the Council itself. Some delegates were calling for an investigation into the claims she'd made, while others dismissed them as propaganda. The divide was widening, and Rachel knew she had to exploit it. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft knock on the door. She sighed and called out, "Come in." The door slid open, revealing David Hale, the veiled diplomat who had been her ally since the beginning. His shimmering skin caught the dim light of the room, giving him an almost ethereal appearance. Despite his alien features, there was something deeply human about the way he carried himself, thoughtful, compassionate. "How are you holding up?" David asked gently, stepping inside and closing the door behind him. Rachel shrugged, forcing a weak smile. "As well as can be expected, I guess. It's hard to feel anything right now, except tired." David nodded, understanding without needing further explanation. "Marcus's death wasn't in vain," he said, after a moment. "The message got through. People are listening. That's what matters." "I know," Rachel replied, though her voice lacked conviction. "But is it enough? We've exposed the Council's manipulation, but they're still stronger than us. What happens when they decide to stop playing games and just crush us?" David hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "That's why we need to act quickly. You've planted the seed of doubt in the galaxy. We have to nurture it, turn hesitation into action. There are factions within the Council who don't agree with this ultimatum. If we can sway them, or at least keep them neutral, it buys us time." Rachel leaned back in her chair, considering his words. "And how do we do that?" "They're not exactly lining up to join our cause. We play to their interests," David explained. "Some fear losing trade partnerships with Earth. Others worry about the precedent this sets. If the Council can disarm one species, what's to stop them from doing the same to others? Use those fears to your advantage. Make them see that siding with humanity isn't just altruistic, it's practical." Rachel nodded slowly, the pieces starting to fall into place. It wasn't going to be easy, but it was a plan. And right now, any plan was better than none. Meanwhile, Alex Carter and his team returned to the Mars orbital station, their mission having provided critical intelligence about the Council's operations near Earth's outer colonies. Information painted a grim picture. Supply lines were being systematically targeted, cutting off vital resources needed to sustain both military efforts and civilian populations. Worse, the Council appeared to be testing experimental weapons, deploying them in skirmishes against human ships. These weapons caused catastrophic damage, capable of disabling entire fleets with a single strike. Alex reported directly to Captain Hayes, the station's commanding officer, in a private briefing room. The captain listened intently as Alex outlined the findings, his expression growing darker with each detail. When Alex finished, the captain exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. "This changes everything," Hayes muttered. "If they deploy those weapons on a larger scale, we're done. Finished. We need countermeasures and fast." "That's why I brought someone along," Alex said, gesturing toward the door. A moment later, Mia Torres entered, carrying a datapad filled with schematics and calculations. She placed it on the table between them, tapping a few commands to bring up a holographic display. "These are designs for an energy shield enhancement," Mia explained, pointing to the diagram. "It won't stop their weapons completely, but it should reduce the impact enough to give us a fighting chance. Problem is, implementing it will take time and resources we might not have." Hayes studied the design, nodding thoughtfully. "Doable," he said finally. "But we'll need help. Get engineering teams working on this immediately. Prioritize production wherever possible." Alex and Mia exchanged a glance, relief washing over them. For once they had something concrete to work toward, a tangible step forward in a war that often felt unwinnable. Back on Earth, Rachel put David's advice into action. She reached out to sympathetic council members, appealing to their self-interests rather than their morality. One such delegate was Lirith H., a representative from the aquatic species known as the Silfari. Lirith had always been cautious in council debates, rarely taking sides unless absolutely necessary. But Rachel knew the Silfari valued stability. Above all else, and the prospect of galactic chaos didn't sit well with them, their meeting took place aboard a neutral diplomatic vessel orbiting a gas giant far from prying eyes. Lirith floated gracefully in a tank of water, specially designed to accommodate her physiology, her bioluminescent markings pulsating softly as she spoke. "Delegate Monroe," Lirith began, her voice melodic yet firm, "your claims are troubling. If true, they suggest a level of corruption within the council that cannot be ignored." "They are true," Rachel insisted, leaning forward slightly to emphasize her point. "And if nothing is done, the consequences will ripple across the galaxy. Trade routes disrupted, alliances shattered, entire species destabilized." "Is that really what the Silfari want?" Lirith's glow shifted, a sign of contemplation. After a long pause, she spoke again. "I cannot promise support, not openly at least. But I will raise these concerns during the next council session. Perhaps others share my unease." It wasn't a guarantee, but it was progress. Rachel thanked Lirith H. and left the vessel feeling cautiously optimistic. Every small victory counted, no matter how insignificant it seemed. Elsewhere, humanity's newfound allies began mobilizing in earnest. Species who had once kept their distance now offered aid in various forms. Some sent ships to patrol human territory, others shared technology or provided medical supplies. Among these allies was a reptilian species called the Kren, led by a fierce matriarch named Zalka. Known for their tactical brilliance and combat prowess, the Kren had long harbored resentment toward the council for imposing restrictive trade laws. When Rachel approached them with evidence of the council's manipulations, Zalka wasted no time pledging her support. "You speak of freedom," Zalka hissed, her forked tongue flicking as she addressed Rachel. "Freedom is worth fighting. For my warriors stand ready." With the Kren's backing, humanity's coalition grew stronger. Ships bearing the Kren insignia joined patrols alongside human vessels, their presence serving as both a deterrent and a morale boost. Pilots like Alex found themselves flying alongside Kren commanders, learning new strategies and adapting to combined tactics. The alliance was far from perfect. Cultural differences often led to misunderstandings, but the shared goal of resisting the council united them. Despite these victories, the threat of escalation loomed large. Reports came in of council envoys visiting neutral planets, attempting to sway undecided species with promises of protection and prosperity. Propaganda campaigns painted humanity as reckless warmongers, intent on disrupting galactic peace. Rachel worked tirelessly to counter these narratives, giving interviews to interstellar news outlets and addressing crowds via holographic transmissions. "We are not aggressors," she declared during one such speech. "We are survivors, people who refuse to bow to tyranny. To those who doubt us, I ask, would you willingly surrender your freedom, your right to choose your own destiny? Because that is what the council demands, not just of us, but of everyone." Words resonated with many, sparking protests on worlds once loyal to the council. Even some council-aligned species began questioning their leaders' motives, demanding transparency and accountability. The council's authority, once unshakable, was beginning to crack. On the Mars orbital station, Alex stood on the observation deck once more, watching as human and Kren ships conducted joint drills in the distance. The sight filled him with a mix of pride and determination. They weren't just defending Earth, they were fighting for something bigger. Something universal. Mia joined him, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Alex before leaning against the railing beside him. "Feels good, doesn't it?" she asked, nodding toward the fleet below. "What those?" Alex replied, though. He already Canalix smiled faintly, sipping his coffee. "It feels good." For the first time in weeks, there was hope, not just for humanity, but for everyone who believed in freedom. The Council had crossed a line, and now the galaxy was waking up to the truth. Whatever came next, Alex knew one thing for C. The tension in the galaxy reached a breaking point. Despite humanity's growing coalition, the Council showed no signs of backing down. Instead, they escalated their efforts to isolate Earth and its allies, deploying more ships to patrol contested regions and tightening their grip on trade routes. For weeks, skirmishes erupted along the borders of human-controlled space, each clash leaving behind destroyed vessels and lost lives. The Council's message was clear: resistance would not be tolerated. On Earth, Rachel Monroe worked tirelessly to rally support for the cause. She traveled from one colony to another, meeting with leaders of alien species who had pledged their allegiance to humanity. Some were hesitant, fearing retaliation from the Council, while others were eager to take a stand. Among these supporters was Zalka, the Kren matriarch whose warriors had already proven invaluable in defending human territory. Together, they devised a strategy to counter the Council's aggressive patrols and protect vulnerable colonies, but Rachel knew that defense alone wouldn't win this fight. They needed to strike Baka, bold move to show the Council that humanity wasn't just surviving, it was fighting back. She proposed an audacious plan: a coordinated attack on a key Council supply depot located near the edge of neutral space. The depot was heavily guarded, but if they succeeded, it would deal a significant blow to the Council's operations and inspire even more species to join their cause. Alex Carter stood in the command center of the Mars orbital station, staring at a holographic map of the targeted depot. The image rotated slowly, highlighting defensive positions, patrol patterns, and potential entry points. Around him, officers and strategists debated tactics, their voices overlapping in a cacophony of urgency. "This is insane," Mia Torres muttered, shaking her head as she studied the map. "Even with the Kren fleet backing us up, we're outnumbered 3-1. Alex nodded grimly. He agreed with her assessment. It was risky, maybe even reckless. But he also knew they couldn't afford to play it safe anymore. Every day they waited gave the Council more time to strengthen their position. If they wanted to turn the tide, they had to act now. "It's dangerous," Alex admitted, turning to face the group. "But it's our best shot. If we can hit them hard enough, we'll send a message not just to the Council, but to everyone watching. We're still here. We're still fighting." Captain Hayes, the station's commanding officer, stepped forward, his expression resolute. "Agreed. Let's make it happen. Finalize the battle plans and get our pilots ready. We move." At dawn, preparations began immediately. Engineers worked around the clock to implement Mia's energy shield enhancement, ensuring their ships could withstand the Council's advanced weaponry. Pilots trained relentlessly, running simulations of the upcoming mission until they could execute their maneuvers in their sleep. Supplies were loaded onto every available vessel, and medical teams prepared for the inevitable casualties as the hours ticked by. Alex found himself pacing the length of the hangar bay, his mind racing with doubts and fears. This wasn't just another skirmish, it was a full-scale assault, and failure wasn't an option. He thought about the people counting on him, the civilians living in colonies under threat, the families of the pilots who trusted him to bring their loved ones home. The weight of responsibility pressed down on him like a vice. Mia approached him, her face pale but determined. "You okay?" she asked softly, placing a hand on his arm. Alex forced a smile, though it didn't reach his eyes, just thinking about. What? Everything, he admitted. What happens if we lose? What happens if I screw this up? Mia shook her head firmly. You won't. You've trained us. Let us, you've done everything you can. We'll get through this together. Her words brought a flicker of reassurance, but Alex knew the truth. No amount of preparation could guarantee success. All they could do was try and hope it was enough. At dawn, the Coalition fleet launched into space, a motley assembly of human Kren and other allied ships. Their formation stretched across the void, engines glowing faintly against the backdrop of stars. As they approached the Council depot, tension crackled through the comms channels. Pilots exchanged nervous banter, trying to mask their fear with humor. Alex sat in the cockpit of his fighter, gripping the controls tightly as he scanned the horizon for signs of enemy activity. Entering hostile territory became the voice of Captain Hayes over the intercom. All units maintain formation and prepare for engagement. The depot loomed ahead, its massive structure bristling with turrets and surrounded by a swarm of patrol ships. Alex's heart pounded as he watched the enemy fleet mobilize, their sleek vessels moving with precision. A sense of dread washed over him, but he pushed it aside, focusing on the task at hand. This is Alpha Leader, he said, addressing his squadron. Stick to the plan. Hit them fast, hit them hard, and don't let them regroup. The first wave of missiles streaked across the darkness, illuminating the battlefield with flashes of light. Plasma bolts arced between ships, filling the void. With chaos, Alex maneuvered his fighter with practiced skill, dodging fire while lining up shots on enemy vessels. Beside him, Mia proved her worth once again, taking down 2 fighters with quick, precise blasts. Despite their initial success, the Council forces quickly adapted, launching a counterattack that caught the Coalition off guard. Explosions rocked the fleet, sending debris spiraling into space. Ships went dark, their crews lost in the fray. Through it all, Alex fought fiercely, his determination outweighing his fear. Shields are failing, Mia shouted over the comms, her voice strained. We need to fall back. No, Alex replied sharply. Not yet. Hold your position. Moments later, reinforcements arrived, the Kren fleet, led by Zalka herself. Their ships unleashed a devastating barrage of plasma torpedoes, cutting through the Council's defenses like a knife through paper. With the enemy distracted, Alex seized the opportunity to lead a daring charge toward the depot's main reactor. We're going in, he announced, his voice steady, despite the adrenaline coursing through him. Cover me. Mia and the rest of his squadron obeyed without hesitation, laying down suppressing fire as Alex guided his ship toward the target. The reactor was heavily guarded, but Alex relied on speed and precision to weave through the defenses. When he finally reached it, he armed a payload of explosives and set the timer. Bombs away, he muttered, pulling his ship into a sharp turn as the countdown began. Seconds later, the reactor exploded in a blinding flash of light, engulfing the depot in flames. The shockwave rippled outward, disabling nearby Council ships and scattering their formations. Cheers erupted over the comms as the Coalition fleet regrouped, their spirits buoyed by the victory back on Earth. Rachel watched footage of the battle with a mixture of relief and pride. The attack had been a success. Not only had they destroyed the depot, but they'd also captured valuable intel from the wreckage. More importantly, the victory demonstrated humanity's resilience and resolve. Across the galaxy, dissent against the Council grew louder, with more species openly joining the resistance, but Rachel knew the fight was far from over. The Council wouldn't take this defeat lying down, they'd retaliate with greater force, targeting Earth directly if necessary. Still, she allowed herself a moment of hope. Against all odds, humanity had struck a blow for freedom, proving that polite modes of negotiation had given way to something stronger: unity, courage, and defiance. As she turned to leave the command, Senator David Hale appeared in the doorway, his shimmering form catching the light. Well done, he said simply, his tone carrying both admiration and caution. But don't celebrate too soon. The Council will come for us next. Rachel nodded, steeling herself for what lay ahead. Let them, she replied, her voice firm. We're ready. The victory at the Council's supply depot sent shockwaves through the galaxy. News of the daring attack spread quickly, carried by encrypted broadcasts and whispered conversations among alien species. For the first time in years, the Council's dominance was questioned openly. Neutral planets that had once remained silent now voiced their concerns, demanding answers from the Council about its true intentions. Some even began severing ties with the governing body, redirecting trade routes and resources to support humanity's coalition. On Earth, Rachel Monroe worked tirelessly to capitalize on the momentum. She traveled across human colonies and allied territories, delivering impassioned speeches that resonated with both humans and aliens alike. Her message was simple but powerful. Freedom was worth fighting for. Every species deserved the right to chart its own course, free from oppression or manipulation. Rachel knew she couldn't rely solely on words. Actions mattered more than ever. But her ability to inspire others gave the coalition a sense of purpose beyond survival. Meanwhile, Alex Carter returned to the Mars orbital station, hailed as a hero for his role in the successful assault. Though he tried to brush off the praise, he couldn't deny the impact of what they'd achieved. The destroyed depot had disrupted the Council's operations, forcing them to divert resources and rethink their strategy. But Alex also knew this was just the beginning. The Council wouldn't tolerate such defiance without responding in force. As he walked through the station's corridors, he noticed a change in the atmosphere. Morale was higher than it had been in months, with pilots and crew members exchanging smiles and jokes. Even the engineers, usually gruff and reserved, seemed more upbeat, working with renewed energy as they repaired damaged ships and upgraded systems. It was a small but meaningful reminder of why they were fighting, not just for survival, but for hope. In the days following the battle, the coalition continued to grow. More species joined the resistance, drawn by the promise of unity and self-determination. Among these newcomers were the veiled David Hale's people, who had long been cautious observers of galactic politics. Their decision to side with humanity marked a turning point. The Veil were respected for their intelligence and technological prowess, and their involvement signaled that the tide of public opinion was shifting. David himself played a crucial role in rallying his fellow Veil. He stood before a gathering of delegates on his homeworld, his shimmering form glowing faintly under the artificial lights. "For too long, we have allowed fear to dictate our choices," he said, his voice calm, yet commanding. "We have stayed silent while the Council tightened its grip on the galaxy. But silence is no longer an option. Humanity has shown us what courage looks like. Will we stand with them? More will we watch as freedom slips away?" His words struck a chord, and within hours the Veil announced their official support for the coalition. Ships bearing their insignia joined patrols alongside human and Kryn vessels, their advanced sensors and cloaking technology providing a significant advantage. Pilots like Alex welcomed the reinforcements, knowing they would need every edge they could get when the Council launched its inevitable counterattack. Despite the growing alliance, tensions remained high. Reports came in of increased activity near Earth's core systems, with Council fleets amassing along the borders. Intelligence suggested they were preparing for a massive invasion, a direct assault on humanity's home planet. The thought sent shivers down Rachel's spine, but she refused to let fear paralyze her. Instead, she doubled down on her efforts, coordinating with military leaders to strengthen Earth's defenses. "We can't afford to be reactive anymore," she told Captain Hayes during a strategy meeting aboard the orbital station. "If they're coming for us, we need to be ready. Not just to defend, but to strike back." Hayes nodded grimly. "Agreed, but striking where? We've hit one depot. What's next?" Rachel leaned forward, her eyes gleaming with determination. "They're communication hubs. Without them, they lose coordination. It'll buy us time, and maybe even turn some of their allies against them." The plan was risky, requiring precision and stealth. But Alex volunteered immediately, eager to build on the success of the previous mission. "I'll lead the team," he said firmly. "We've done it before. We can do it again." Mia Torres raised an eyebrow, skepticism written all over her face. You sure about that? Last time was close enough as it is? I'm sure, Alex replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. This time, we'll have the veil. Tech. We'll make it work. Preparations began anew, with engineers integrating veil-cloaking devices into the Coalition fleet. The upgrades allowed ships to move undetected through enemy territory, giving them a critical advantage. Pilots trained rigorously, running simulations of the upcoming mission until they could execute their maneuvers flawlessly. Supplies were stockpiled, and medical teams braced for the worst. As launch day approached, Alex found himself reflecting on everything that had led them to this moment. Sacrifices made, the battles fought, the lives lost. It all weighed heavily on him. He thought about Marcus Lee, whose bravery had exposed the Council's corruption, and Zalka, whose warriors had stood shoulder to shoulder with humanity. Most of all, he thought about the civilians counting on him, the families living in fear of what might come next. You look like you've got something on your mind, Mia said, interrupting his thoughts as she approached him in the hangar. Alex shrugged, forcing a smile, just thinking about how far we've come. And how much farther we've got to go, Mia added, her expression softening, but we'll get there together. Her words brought a flicker of reassurance, and Alex nodded, turning his attention back to the task at hand. Whatever happened next, they couldn't afford to falter. At dawn, the Coalition fleet slipped into enemy territory, their cloaked ships moving silently through the void. The target was a sprawling communication hub located deep within Council-controlled space, its towers rising like jagged spires against the blackness of space. As they approached, Alex scanned the horizon for signs of trouble, his fingers hovering over the controls. All units maintain stealth protocols, he instructed over the comms. We don't want to give ourselves away until we're ready. Infiltration went smoothly at first, with the fleet navigating past patrol ships and automated turrets without detection. But as they neared the hub, alarms blared, breaking the silence. Someone or something had triggered the defenses. Guess we've been spotted, Mia muttered, her voice tense. What's the plan? Stick to the mission, Alex replied, his voice steady despite the surge of adrenaline. Disable the hub and fall back. Don't engage unless absolutely necessary. With the element of surprise gone, the Coalition fleet launched a desperate assault. Plasma bolts streaked across the battlefield, lighting up the darkness with bursts of fiery orange. Alex maneuvered his ship with practiced skill, dodging fire while targeting key sections of the hub. Beside him, Mia proved her worth once again, taking out enemy fighters with quick, precise shots. The battle raged on, each side refusing to yield. Explosions rocked the void, sending debris spiraling into space. Ships went dark, their crews lost. In the chaos, through it all, Alex fought fiercely, his determination outweighing his fear. Finally, after what felt like hours, the hub's central tower collapsed in a shower of sparks and smoke. Cheers erupted over the comms as the Coalition fleet regrouped, their spirits buoyed by another hard-fought victory. Back on Earth, Rachel watched footage of the battle with a mixture of relief and pride. The destruction of the communication hub dealt a significant blow to the Council's ability to coordinate its forces, further weakening their position. Across the galaxy, dissent grew louder, with more species openly joining the resistance. Even some Council-aligned factions began questioning their loyalty, torn between duty and morality. But Rachel knew the fight was far from over. The Council wouldn't take this defeat lying down. They'd retaliate with greater force, targeting Earth directly if necessary. Still, she allowed herself a moment of hope. Against all odds, humanity had struck another blow for freedom, proving that polite modes of negotiation had given way to something stronger: unity, courage, and defiance. As she turned to leave the command center, David Hale appeared in the doorway, his shimmering form catching the light. Well done, he said simply, his tone carrying both admiration and caution. But don't celebrate too soon. The Council will come for us next. Rachel nodded, steeling herself for what lay ahead. Let them, she replied, her voice firm. We're ready.